Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have 5 novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. You know how often I like saying this, people, but I love, love, love chatting with writers who are also friends and friends who become writers. And that's the case today. I want you to meet a friend who became an author. And not only that, I wouldn't be the author I am today if it wasn't for her. Meet Cheryl McKissack Daniel. Hey, Cheryl.
Hi, Karen. It's so nice to be on your show today.
Oh, I am so glad to see you, and I'm so excited about this book, which I had the pleasure of reading in a way back when manuscript, and it has just turned out so beautifully. I'm so excited. So let's get started. Let's get started. First, I should tell you the name of the book, everybody. It is, oh, see, I got my copy, and you can see Cheryl's copies in the back there. So it is called The Black Family Who Built America, the McKissacks, 2 Centuries of Daring Pioneers. It just came out in August, and it's already, people, a #1 biography on Amazon and in Black and African American history. So this is such an important book right at this time in our history.
Absolutely. Yes.
So let's start with the amazing backstory. Just take us back to your enslaved ancestor and kind of what's the origin story of this company?
So our company dates back 230 years when the first descendant of our family came to this country as a slave, Moses McKissack the first. And Moses was taught the trade of making bricks. And he must have made those bricks really well. uh, because his son, Moses McKissack II, was a master carpenter. So that was the beginning of passing down construction as a legacy in this family. And so he was known for his spiral staircases and gingerbread finishes on homes, and eventually ended up working at the Maxwell House Hotel in Nashville, Tennessee. Um, Now, they found their roots in North Carolina, but Moses McKissack II was given as a wedding gift to the Maxwell family, which is how they made it to Tennessee. And that was in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And then Moses McKissack III and his brother Calvin became the first Black licensed architects in America with license 117 and 118 in the state of Tennessee. And that was
Wow.
in 1922, over 100 years ago. Uh, and if you can imagine two Black men in the Deep South going to take their license, that in itself is a story and a chapter in the book about how they were denied over and over again because of the color of their skin.
Cheryl, in that same time period, my grandfather was a lawyer. He graduated from NYU. He come from
Amazing.
the South, and he graduated from Shore University. He got a law degree from NYU and didn't practice law. I'm so in awe, because he was a waiter until my grandmother met
It
him.
was
He was working
difficult for him to
because it
find.
was so difficult. So go ahead. I just know this period was so hard for folks to get ahead.
Yes, this that is an amazing story, and it just makes me think that we have so many stories that we need to get out to the public because people just don't understand what we've been through. And although we've been excellent at what we do, Shaw University and NYU And to still be, a waiter and not be able to practice what you've been trained for is a travesty.
It
Um,
is.
and that is why this book is so important now. Um, because the McKissacks had to persevere through all of that. I mean, the backdrop at that time was, right after the movie Birth of a Nation.
Ugh.
So there was a period of time right after slavery that, white people were patronizing black businesses. And some of them wanted to, actually embrace black businesses because they needed the service still. But
Mm.
then after that movie came out, and by the way, that movie was a huge success in Hollywood,
Oh.
but it depicted black people as rapists, as ignorant, as thieves, and for white people who were confused on really what to do, this let
Mm-hmm.
them know, well, you shouldn't embrace anybody black, that's for sure. And then for white people who just hated us anyway, this gave them the license to kill us. So this movie had a huge impact. And to think that the president of the United States at the time actually showed this movie in the White House lets you know that it became a very important household movie for people across the country. And so shortly after that is when we began to experience all of, the burnings in Tulsa and Philadelphia and, all across the nation where black people were beginning to actually have businesses. And just think if we had been able to build from that point and
Yes.
where we would
Where
be
we would
today.
be. But your ancestors persevered.
Yes, but
Your
I think it's important to understand that was the backdrop in which they persevered in.
persevered.
Yeah,
Yes.
that
Yes.
was it.
So now
Yes,
the two brothers started their business, right?
yes, in 1905.
And
Hmm.
then,
So in 1905, they had a lot of white clients, but then as the mood began to change with respect to black people, they had to begin to start looking into the black community for their projects. And so they built,
mm,
thousands of churches. They
mm,
worked for historically black colleges. Um, we have probably worked for 19 or 20 of those colleges, Harry Medical School, Fisk University, Tennessee State,
mm.
uh, Tuskegee University. The list just goes on, all the way to Howard University. So that became, the focal point for the McKissacks. And so, it's each generation is more of a re-engineering of
Mhm.
where you're going to find the clients to bring in the revenue. And so for them, it was, black patriots at that point.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things you write about quite a bit, because you as a CEO today, you followed your mother as the CEO who followed your father when your father died.
Yeah.
And you write quite a bit about your mom in this book. And as my husband tells me all the time, who loves having dinner with her and interacting with her, he says she is something else. She is something else. Hope if you could take a few minutes and tell us about the woman who, you know, led this amazing company and then, under circumstances that she didn't anticipate, and then passed it on to you.
Yes. There's something to be said when people's ability is stifled because of what society thinks they should be doing, similar
Mhm.
to your father. I mean, I feel like if my mother, as a woman, had been accepted in the business world and ended up going to NYU in business as opposed to being an educator, because women were only teachers, they were
Nurses.
librarians, but they weren't
Mhm.
doctors and lawyers. I always think about where would my mother be because she had such a business sense about her. And so when my father had his massive stroke and she had to step in and run the business, she had a master's degree in psychology. She was not an architect.
Mm.
She wasn't a contractor. She didn't know how to build anything. Matter of fact, she'll tell you, she only knew the telephone number to my father's office. But she stepped in and she used everything she had. And we like to say it was her psychology degrees that helped her deal with the phobias and manias of men who didn't understand that a woman could run a business in 1983. Now,
Mm.
mind you, it seems like yesterday, but in
But
that period, women could not borrow money. Women could not borrow money until 1990 when the Women's Business Act went into effect, when Congress said, listen, we're going to recognize women as business people. Um, that was the year Spike Lee put out She's Gotta Have It. That is how recent that
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Um, and so she came into this business and had to maintain it without being able to borrow money and figure out how to bring in clients and not have an architectural degree. I mean, that's one of the things that architects do is they're hands-on and they're able to
Mhm.
show their clients a little bit of their work to sell their business. Well, mom couldn't do that. Um,
Mm.
but what she was very good at was forging relationships with people and
Mm.
setting up a case as to why she should be hired um, to be the architect of their projects. I'll never forget, we were walking through Tuskegee one day, and it was an opening for a new building, and my mother was giving her speech. And at the end of the speech, Dr. Payton, the president, came over and said, well, Lee, I told you when you started this project that I wanted operable windows. But every window in this building is inoperable. And we are in Tuskegee, Alabama. We're going to suffocate. So mom looked at him and she was not happy. But she said, you know what, Dr. Payton, we're going to take out every window and replace them. So she got his attention. She satisfied his problem. And then we continued to walk the campus and she saw this old building and she said, listen, I see you living there. Aren't you looking for a new residence? And so the Dr. Payne said, I'm not moving in that place. It's a mess. We keep our line equipment there. Mom said, no, I see you living there. We're going to call it Gray Columns. Make a long story short, he commissioned her to provide the architectural services to renovate the building and turn it into his residence. And it still stands as the residence of Tuskegee. But look how masterful that was.
I was just gonna say, what a lesson in leadership skills, and first to listen to your client, then to
Mm-hmm.
fix it, and
Yeah.
then talk them into doing something else. That was just and vision. Look at the vision she had looking at that building.
Yeah.
That is just
Yeah.
awesome. That's a wonderful story. So you're saying that, back in when your mom took over, they treated women, women didn't have a lot of things that they couldn't do and things. Then you took over. So as the CEO, I know there've been challenges. I know you've had like ups and downs, even though you guys are just, it hasn't been all straight up. It's been,
No.
ups and downs. I wonder if you could share with our audience something amazing that you loved that happened as a CEO, and then something you like your mom that you had to overcome as a CEO.
Sure. There's so many great highlights, but like you said, there are also setbacks, and that's just life. Um, I have to say that when I met Saud bin Laden and I was in Dubai And they were talking to us seriously about building soccer stadiums. That was an all-time high for me. You know, to have really impacted people from another nation who had
Mhm.
heard our story, who saw our, marketing material online and said, we want to meet with this company. That really, made me feel as though, okay, I've accomplished something. I have finally gotten the word out about this incredible company, McKissick and McKissick. And to be there and to be treated with such respect, knowing how the Saudis view women. And so that was my first inquiry with my consultants who took me over there is, is Saad going to be able to conduct business with a woman?
Yeah, does he know I'm a woman? I want to know that before we go.
So that is in the book. You got to get the book to read about the Bin Ladens. But that was interesting because I go with one of my colleagues, and his brother had died in the World Trade Center.
Mm,
And
mm,
he's sitting there thinking,
mm,
should I kill this man?
mm, mm.
I'm like, and so when we leave the meeting, Brian is telling me all of the feelings he's having.
Nothing,
And I'm
yeah.
explaining to him, this is Saad bin Laden. This Osama bin Laden, yes, they're half brothers because the father had all these concubines, but
Mm,
he wasn't in the same class as Saad bin Laden. Um, he just had the same name.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Another lesson, right?
another
About
lesson. Yeah.
biases and how biases can get in the way and stuff. So one of the things you're very frank in this book. Very, very frank, very open. You because after we hear the history, we learn a lot about you. We learn a lot about you running the company and things that have happened in your life.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering how your family reacted to the book, how your mom, how your daughters, anyone else in the family, how they reacted to this amazing book.
So mom was part of telling the story. She really wanted to get it out. And so I have been working at this probably since 2003, just trying to get the McKissick story out in some kind of way. I started with a sitcom with a writer out in California, and that didn't really go
Sitcom.
anywhere. Yes, can you imagine? And then
I'm sorry, that one just, I missed that. A sitcom. Okay, go ahead.
and then you remember I was working with Marie Brown, who brought me to a historian, and that book was just so boring when I picked it up.
It didn't
This
sound like
sounds like a history
you.
book.
And it didn't sound like you. The biggest
No,
thing that I
you read
thought
it.
about that was that your voice wasn't there. Whereas in
No.
this wonderful book, your voice is, I feel like you're talking to me.
Yes, yes, and that's basically how it was written too. And so, with my mother kept saying, Cheryl, when are you going to get this done? I want it out before I die. And so when Chandra, my PR consultant, introduced me to Nick Chow's, I had already realized how difficult it is to make a story of five generations interesting. That's a very difficult task because you don't know where to start and where, to fill in and where to finish. So Nick was able to start with the Barclay Arena and then begin to bring in all of the history behind what had happened before we got to the Barclay Arena.
Barkley.
And
Mhm.
so he made it extremely interesting. And so my mother is extremely happy about this book. When
Oh,
she's
good.
read it a couple of times, she's just ecstatic. My husband's ecstatic. My twin sister, for some reason, is not. I don't
Mm,
know why. I
mm,
don't know why.
She'll tell
Anyway,
you eventually. She'll tell
e-
you.
eventually, you write a book, you know you're going to have some good feedback and you're going to have bad feedback, and people are going to take it however they take it.
Yeah.
Um, but for the most part, it's been great feedback. And I wanted this book to be honest. And, I basically told stories from my perspective. It's not anybody else's perspective, it's my perspective. So there's room for many others to come
Mm-hmm.
along and write their version of a McKissick
And
story.
tell them and tell the story the way they want to tell the story.
Yes.
So, so yesterday you told me something that right, a lot of writers watch the show. So I have a lot of writer people that are, it's a lot of readers, but there's also lots of writers that watch the show. And you had an experience, an AI experience that was just so shocking, but not. You know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. And then, so if you just take a few minutes just to tell our audience about what happened.
Sure, yes. On Saturday, I decided to go out and buy some books on Amazon because my books have not arrived, and I promised some people some books. Um, and I noticed there's another book out there with a similar title to mine. It's called The McKissick Family: 2 Centuries of Building America's Future. And ours is The Black Family Who Built America, uh, 2 centuries of daring pioneers, the McKissacks. And so I go to the description and it says the story of Moses McKissack to Cheryl McKissack. And it just came out on August 24th. Mine came out on August 12th. And, I try to see who wrote it, and it goes to a publisher. And I contacted my attorney right away, who has now
Hmm.
written Amazon and, of course, Simon and Schuster. But basically, I have not seen the book. I ordered it. It hasn't come. But I believe that my book was fed through AI, and then there was some type of book generated that was similar to mine,
Yeah, just stolen.
just stolen.
Your
Yeah.
story. And this is even worse than, someone stealing my fiction is one thing. Someone stealing my life, you know, right? I mean, somebody's taking as if they lived this life that I lived. I mean, this is a biography. This is, oh, it was just so awful. So anyway, the lawyers are on top of it, right?
The lawyers are on top of it. We've alerted Amazon. And there was also, my attorney found a workbook if you want to learn the McKissick history in 30 minutes. So there are two plagiarized books out there.
Oh my gosh. And we as readers, we need to shop carefully. We need to not support things like this. We should question and buy carefully. That's awful. So I wanted to, before I shift the conversation about, because what are you reading? What are you writing? I did want to ask you, what do you want people, what's the main thing you would like your readers to take away after having read this book? What do you want me to think, feel, do after reading this wonderful story?
What's important to me is legacy. And I think if people just take away the fact that we all have a legacy. My interest in our story started with a family tree. So if someone just takes away from this book to start a family tree, yeah, I mean, if you know your parents, right? So start with yourself, your parents, and your children, and pass it down because it's important for people to understand where they've come from.
That's such good advice. We should know our story and we should
Mhm.
pass our story down. And
Absolutely.
and then here's a family story that will give you pleasure to read. That will really give you pleasure to read. So before you go, do you have a book that you've read recently, biography, memoir, whatever it
Mhm.
is, that you could recommend to our audience?
So recently I have been reading Isabella, I have it right here, Wilkerson,
Oh,
The
she's so
Warmth
good.
of Other Suns.
Yes.
I like the way she writes because
Hmm.
it's a lot of historical information, but then she throws in the personal stories. And this is a beautiful book.
It
I
is.
did read Cast, and I'm beginning to like this one better.
Yeah. This is a really, what Cass was a very good book. But The Warmth of Other Suns is a beautiful, beautifully written book. I
I know
agree
you
with you.
like it because one of the characters are from Harlem.
I'm always putting people in Harlem, you know? All my books are somehow set in New York. That's where I have to, I've traveled the world. I have traveled the world, but all my books end up back in New York.
Well, I get it.
Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I thank you so much. Our audience is totally intrigued. So you know that you can find her book every place that you buy books, wherever you borrow books, wherever you buy books, you can find it. And if it's not there, you need to ask. But what if people wanted to get in touch with you, Cheryl? If they wanted to know more about you, more about your business, um, how can they be in touch with you?
Okay, so I have a website that will focus in on this book and where I'm going to have book signings over the next 4 months, and with whom. And that's at Cheryl McKissack Daniel. And for my company, it's at McKissack.com.
And are you on social media at all?
I am, yes, and it's
Yes.
at McKissack, at Cheryl McKissack Daniel. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Excellent, excellent. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I had such a good time.
I did too,
And I
Karen.
hope that you're thoroughly intrigued and want to reach out to Cheryl. Of course, you're going to buy her amazing book. You're going to read it. You're going to write a review
Yes,
because you know
please. Thank
how,
you, Karen.
right? Got to write
Yes,
a
we need a
review. I've
review.
already written mine. If I didn't, I will very shortly, but I think I already
Okay.
did. And I hope that you will tell Cheryl when you're in touch that you met her on what are you reading, what are you writing. See you next week, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.